What if everything you thought you needed to fix in your life wasn't actually broken? I sat down with Barrett and he shared how true healing starts with finding safety and okayness within yourself, even when life feels anything but okay. This conversation completely reframed how I think about growth and forgiveness. Barrett's insights into releasing trauma and embracing your true self hit me hard, and I think they'll do the same for you. Welcome to Seekers and Shifters, where we talk to the world's foremost experts in personal growth and development and ask them everything we really want to know. Hello, Seekers and Shifters. It's Michelle, and I am here today with Barrett. Barrett, you want to introduce yourself?
Aloha, my name is Barrett, coming from Honolulu today. And what should I introduce myself with? Well, I've been having interesting experiences my whole life, trying to be normal. And now I'm just fully embracing my life. And it just keeps getting better and better.
Well, and you and I don't know each other, but I do know enough about you to know that you are a highly gifted individual in the spiritual realm. And so I want to ask you all about that. I will tell you that a theme of this show that's been coming up with lots of people here is this feeling of knowing that we had certain gifts or that, you know, like certain experiences that we maybe tried to push to the side and be normal for a while. And then at a certain point gave up and said, no, I'm just going to embrace it. I'm going to be out about it. I'm curious because you're younger than most of the people I've been talking to. You're younger than me. Shocking. I know we look the same age, but he's actually much younger. Barrett, at what point did you say, fuck it, I'm gonna be out about this?
Oof, when did that happen? I mean, it's almost like I haven't really had a choice as much as like I wish I did. I remember when I was a little kid, I told my mom, I was like, I'm psychic. Like I know things all the time before they happen that I shouldn't logically know. And she was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like your great grandmother was very psychic. That whole side is Celtic, 100% Scottish. And, but it wasn't until like 2018 when a tarot reader who met me in public at an event that she was doing, and she was like, oh, you're really psychic. Like, I just want to start asking you questions. And at the time I was like selling timeshare. So it was like, okay. And she ended up finding me on Instagram like 6 months later. We never even exchanged any information. And she's like, how much do you charge for readings? And I was like, I don't do readings. And she's like, yeah, you do. How much do you charge?
You know.
And it's from there. And it's been a wild ride. So like about 2018 that I've been doing it publicly, but the first time I channeled was when I was like in middle school. We were asked to write a fantasy story, and I sat down. I was like, oh, I'm going to write about a phoenix. And then I go to type, and my fingers type out the entire story without my mind doing anything with it. And at the end, I read it, and I'm like, there is like an intelligence way beyond me that is like coming onto this paper. And so that was my first experience of like, whoa. But I grew up in a very Christian household. My parents are missionaries. And so I knew just to like hold it inside and not say anything because my experience was very different from the world that I was raised in. So,
but your mom was really accepting of it. It sounds like, nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost like my parents didn't have a choice either, because my experiences were so off the wall, but always so accurate. Like there was just no denying the experience. And that's kind of been like a theme with my life is that none of my experiences have ever felt like they were for me. They always felt like they were to have a story of something that would transmit something. And I didn't even know what that meant, but it's like, the embodied experiences that I've had are like so sure and integral in my nervous system that when I share them, it like transforms the other person's like subconscious capacity of what's real. So
yeah, your certainty is so strong that the other person's certainty comes along. And we actually talk about that a lot in sales. You had a little bit of a sales background, so that's kind of interesting. I know that's not what you're talking about, but I feel like there's a parallel concept there. And lots of people that we talk to that are gifted and the experiences I've had as well, share this experience of if something is coming through me, this is not something that I'm doing, and the practice becomes sometimes getting out of the way. It sounds like you didn't even have to like learn how to get out of the way, like you were just out of the way from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I often say like this lifetime for me is like everything that I know now is nothing new. It's just that I finally have the words to describe my experience. And my getting out of the way is just that little last part that's like, this is just what your life is. And like, that's what you're going to do, you know? And as soon as I like, quote unquote, surrendered my will to that, um, it was just me getting everything that I wanted, because what I wanted and what my life wanted for me were the same thing. And it's just like things just keep getting more miraculous and amazing the more that I follow that. And the risk that I must take, which is so easy now, is what other people will think about me. And actually just that, whatever that is now fuel, because I'm taking that in as its own drive towards allowing this to become more common, more normal, because my true feeling is that we're all super empathic and intuitive beings, and we've just sort of forgotten through various cultural and societal shifts. And I feel like there's a time now where all of these things are being married back in. The spirit and the form are coming back together. So it's very exciting.
Well, and so I've heard this from you and many other people now, that there's a general shift in the energies. There's a general openness to where, and some people describe it as more and more people feel themselves coming online, or their gifts are coming online, or there's suddenly more people are experiencing this, or there's not as much in the way. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? What do you think is happening?
Yeah, actually, this is really cool. I'm currently in the middle of writing about this, and that is that time. I forget when it was exactly. It comes in waves for many people, but a huge wave of the population moved into a new dynamic of time, which is as a bridge concept into electromagnetism. But we were in electrical time, but I'll explain all of this in a second. Electrical time. Then we shifted, and now we're in magnetic time. And then eventually we'll be moving into the electromagnetic. And so you can think of this as masculine and feminine, and then the androgynous, which is the integration of consciousness. And so before, all of your efforts were, the way that you were driving your life was based on your effort. And if you didn't do something, then something wouldn't happen, you know, like 1 + 1 = 2 sort of idea. In magnetism, it doesn't actually matter what you're doing. So we've had this like doing self sort of removed. And the reward in this new energetic architecture that we're steeping in is magnetism. And so it's about your alignment. And so the people's lives who are falling apart right now, it's actually just showing you how far out of alignment you are with your own internal design. And the more that you make those corrections by tuning into your soul, the more the reality around you will just automatically reflect like your natural alignment. And so it's about you magnetizing to yourself versions of reality that are reflecting the consciousness that you've already integrated. So, you know, that's also a different way of how we interface with time as well. It's like the things that you're looking at are actually just the past. And in Hawaiian culture, that's actually so ingrained that they don't even notice that that's how they experience life. But everything in this reality is actually just what's already been. It's a reflection of the past. And so you're the place that it's coming in fresh. And as it's going out, it is spreading out into reality. And the way that you can see that in a more practical term is with regret. Regret is only possible because it is you're already different enough to notice what could have been different in the past. So regret is misperceiving. It's a mistranslation of recognizing the one who's already changed. And so we beat ourselves up by looking at these things that have already happened. But the only reason that you can even tell that something could have been different is because you yourself have already been changed by that. And so regret is just, oh, thank you for showing me how I've already evolved. And you just keep moving forward. So this shift from electric time to magnetic time is allowing us to reflect on what has already been and move forward in new ways. And then once we master that collectively, you can do this individually, then we move into electromagnetic time, which will be a whole other journey of really cool stuff. So
I love that. And I want to ask about electromagnetic time and when is that happening? I think, I do want to kind of break it down a little bit for folks who are listening, because it's, we want to make sure these concepts are accessible for folks. This is high level kind of shit to a certain extent. And what we're talking about really is being energy versus doing energy, right? So many of us have been conditioned, especially in the United States, especially in the capitalist society, where the more we do, the more we get. And to an extent, that's true, right? That gets reinforced for us. We start to do a certain amount, we get a certain amount. We go to school, we go get a job, we work hard, we make more money, and then there's a point in your life in which that stops, and that equation doesn't work anymore. And we have to shift into being first, like being who we want to be, and then from being who we want to be comes having what we want to have, and then kind of doing what we want to do from that point and being in alignment with that. And so what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we have now collectively shifted from a time in which we were doing, and doing was what was going to get us results, to a time in which we all need to be being, and being is what's going to get us the results. And that's not really an easy shift for many people to make.
No, definitely not an easy shift, but it's going to get louder and louder and louder. And the more it's that the energetic supports for the old ways of doing things are gone. And so once that happens, it's like your soul, you're just like all the values in which you've based your life on are different, because you're no longer convinced of the thing giving you what you want. Like I always say, like the final illusion is wanting to be loved. Like you are loved. So once you get that in somatically, then the thing that you're doing is coming from the love, right? So it's not that we can't have or do the thing, whatever it is in your life, but it's that it's coming from that fulfillment versus that thing being the thing that's going to fulfill you. And that goes back to like very simple Zen Buddhism, like unity, consciousness, duality, where it's like the thing is separate from you, or it's a representation of the fulfillment of that which is already inside of you. And I just feel like everything is moving back to this very simple spiritual basis. And from there, we'll have all the material fun and relationships and all that stuff, but it will come from our fulfillment. And I think that's really what electromagnetism is in its most essential form.
It's beautiful, and it's here now, and it's about believing it. I think the first person to introduce me to that concept and reference material for people listening would be like Esther Hicks and Abraham Hicks. I don't know how you feel about Abraham Hicks, but Esther channeling Abraham, and especially in the book The Vortex, talks about that concept of knowing that you already are, and that feeling of alignment that you already have what you need, and then working from there. And that you can feel when you're aligned or misaligned, and that anytime you're having any kind of negative feeling or negative experience, it's really just a flag on your misalignment from, that you've gotten away from that sense of like, you already have what you need. You're already loved. You have the resources you need. You are what you are. And what you are is part of oneness of everything. And as soon as you start to stray from that, it feels bad, right?
Well, and that was my, as a child, growing up, very, very sure of my experience of reality. And, obviously growing up in a Christian church and going to Christian private school and missionary parents, like it was, these concepts of like original sin. And I remember first hearing that and I was like, I'm not originally sinful. Like I'm originally innocent. And it's all of these ideas that are making me feel bad about myself. And so I just decided that I was innocent and I was good. And anything that made me not feel that way was to be questioned. And so anytime I feel off in my system, I'm just like, I literally ask myself, what lens of perception is distorted from my essential truth that I am looking through now at this moment? And then I'm just like asking my mind, my subconscious, to find that. And then it does. And then I am like, oh, well, that's from learning it from this or that or society or whatever. And I'm like, that's not me, And then just getting to come back to that core essential self, which is, I think, a really important tool to have with the collective, how loud things are that people are, you must believe that or experience things this way. We're really moving into this time of real individual sovereignty, but also recognizing deeper and deeper that we share this space together. And so it's a paradox of coming more into your own self whilst also coming together. And I think that's a better narrative than this idea that, society is breaking apart in all of these things. I think we're just learning to finally honor ourselves first, and then we can actually come together in authenticity, because we're not, trying to make other people happy instead of ourselves first. And then we're never coming from that true core essence of who we are.
Well, it's that conscious mind, that pesky conscious mind, that gets in the way sometimes. I think we forget that we're animals. Really, sometimes when I'm trying to explain this concept to a client, I'll talk about a bunny rabbit, and just that a bunny rabbit is not going around, hopping around, thinking about whether it's a good bunny or a bad bunny. Bad bunny. Didn't mean to make that joke, but I did. But it just is. And when we see a bunny rabbit, we think, oh wow, it's good. It's good. It's fuzzy, and it's cute, and it's good. And at no point are we like, that's a bad rabbit, or that's an exceptional rabbit. It's just like, this is a rabbit. We're just animals like bunny rabbits. We're just moving around, and we are good because we are.
Mm.
We don't have to earn that.
Yes.
Right? And we forget that, because layered on top of us in our experience is all this conditioning that we do need to do, that we do need to earn, that we do need to prove to ourselves and to others, to eventually get that label of good. And the irony of that, and I'll tell you, Barrett, because I work with a lot of middle-aged folks who are in what some might call midlife crisis, right? Because the irony is, you get to a point where you have checked all of those boxes in your life, and then you go, wait a second, I still don't feel good. I still don't feel enough. And that's when the shift starts to happen, where you go, shit, I gotta think about my life totally differently. I've got to do things totally differently, because the doing and the trying to prove and the ambition was never going to get me to a place of true fulfillment. It's coming back to realizing that I was good from the very beginning.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful work. I love that you're doing that.
Well, we're saying the same things, and that's why I love your stuff. And we're gonna drop Barrett's social media and everything where you can follow him, and please do, because his words are transformational and transformational to me every day. So you're a beautiful force in the world, reminding me every day to come back to this, because we do forget, and I forget. And I wake up with my to-do list and my companies to run and my children to parent, and all the things that I need to do to be good today. I have to come back to this every single day. I am working toward, and I hope I get soon to the place where I wake up like that. I'm like, I woke up like this. I'm loved. I'm good. I'm one with everything. We're getting toward it. Can we talk about Hawaii? Is that cool?
Yeah.
I want to talk about Hawaii. We share a love of Hawaii, if you want to say it in the native way. And it's complicated, right? You and me and a lot of other spiritual white people love Hawaii. We feel the energy of Hawaii. We feel transformed in Hawaii. I've had many medicinal experiences and transformational experiences in Hawaii. I actually met my partner in Hawaii when we were both studying Hawaiian Huna, me at the beginner level, him at the very advanced level when we met. And so it's a very special place to us for that reason as well. And it's controversial for white people to be in Hawaii and to be taking up space in Hawaii. And, I'm interested in thinking about the line between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation and all those things. I know you've thought much about this and talked much about it, but I wonder if you talk about it to us.
Totally. Yeah. Well, first of all, I always joke that I was conceived in Maui, and I was coming to Maui like every other summer my entire childhood, and one of my parents' favorite places. And I've moved here 5 times, and I've always felt this like strong, very protective feeling for these islands. And I've never considered them to be part of the United States. And that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But when I moved here the second time, I was praying one day to be connected to ancient Hawaiian wisdom. And 3 days later, my friend sent me a Instagram account by the name of Pohala Hawaiian Botanicals. And Pohala Hawaiian Botanicals is fern medicine, and the Hawaiian ferns. So quick little sidebar: they saw the Kali Yuga coming before it arrived, and the ferns have achieved evolutionary stasis, meaning that their DNA doesn't change. And so they were seen as compatible to hold the memories of aloha, so that in the time of the awakening of consciousness, the ferns could be utilized to perfectly remember what aloha was. And so each emotion, quality, and trait of aloha is in different ferns, all these different ferns. And so there's these tinctures and hydrosols that you can take, and it downloads your system with the original coding of that emotion, quality, or trait of aloha. And, I'm pretty woo, but I'm like, okay, a fern is going to download emotional intelligence into my body. Like, okay. So I go to this class, and Keone Hanalei is his name, and he dripped Nawa fern, which is the fern for tenderness, under my tongue. And I was not a crier at this point in my life. Within the next 30 seconds, for the next 30 minutes, in front of like 30 other people, I was bawling my eyes out, like all this emotion just being released. And a big part of that was this feeling like I did not belong here. And there are different sentiments depending on who you talk to. But a main message that I've personally received many times is that Hawaii doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to those who will steward her. And it also belongs to the world, in the sense that if there was one place on the planet where we could all gather in peace, that would be enough to remember heaven on earth eventually. And so I no longer have any guilt, and I feel perfectly fine here. In fact, it's the only place that I've really ever truly felt perfectly fine. And, my whole thing is just ensuring that we are enriching the world around us. And as long as, there's so much trauma held in all of our DNA. And there has to be a place where we can all find a resolution in that together, or else we're just going to be passing back and forth these ideas of you did this or I did that. And to be honest, I have never felt American or even white. I joke around that I should have been born in like a Latino family. Like I just have way too much passion and emotion and all of these things to be born in white bread America. But my soul feels very like Brazilian, very Hawaiian. And when I'm here, I feel like my duty is to channel that energy of what I feel connected to energetically through this form to be a reparative space. And so in that way, I'm a representative of what was, but I am not that. And I get to be the resolution to that. And instead of doubting myself and my inherent qualities, I get to bring a new quality to this look, if you will. And go into the Lo'i, and no, there's all kinds of people there. The Lo'i is like the traditional farming method. And if you're out there with the Hawaiians, like there's no, it's the sense of possession, entitlement, all of these things that are foreign. The Hawaiians hold like these ancient codes of life before the mind really got super involved. And not that the mind isn't here, but it's a marriage of the mind and the heart. And I've said since I was a kid that the world will know untold fortunes of abundance when the mind of North America and the heart of South America are married. Because you have all this rich life of South America, people just living from soul and supporting each other. It's a very like root chakra, like aloha. Aloha here is like a little bit ethereal in a sense. And there's so much abundance. So it's easy to be sharing and giving and that sort of thing. But then in North America, you have the mind and the organization and the execution of goals and all of that stuff. Well, when you combine that with the heart and the mind feels connected to the world around it, there's nothing that we can't solve on this planet. It's the division of the mind and the heart that prevents us from solving these problems, because we think we need to dominate the problem in order to solve it. And it's actually about coming together. And that's what the islands mean to me, is a place that we can come together. I mean, I live on Oahu currently. And this is like one of the most international places I've ever been ever, even more than New York City in many ways. It's very, very diverse. And there's so much opportunity for us to showcase a new way of coming together. And the islands are going to be that place for sure.
I love it. I do have practical questions about that, which is, obviously the entire world population can't gather in or on. It's not big enough, right? Just talk to me about that. If it's the center piece of humanity coming together, how does that work logistically?
Well, I'll share a little esoteric aspect and then just sort of everything else. But if you think about the Pacific Ocean, it's like a satellite dish. And then in the center of the Pacific, you have the islands, which are the tallest mountains in the world from seafloor to the top. And that receives all kinds of energy from the grand central sun and delivers it to the rest of the world. And this is just what I was told what happens. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. But tribally, because people traveled, people spend their entire lives saving up money just to come to the islands once in their lifetime, And being here, if you've never been on the islands, there is an energy that will forever transform the way that you experience life around you. And even when I was a little kid, I was like, I'd tell my friends, like, I'm an ambassador of aloha, like I just feel like I'm supposed to spread it, be, wherever I would go, just like spreading this energy. And really, when I moved, I asked my guides, I was like, why am I moving to Hawaii? one of the things that they told me was that heaven would touch down in Hawaii first and be transmitted to the rest of the planet from there. And there's so many stories that I could tell you that would confirm these random downloads that I get. But Maui and Lahaina really, and Hurricane Lane in 2018, it really just showed me what is possible here. And the Lahaina fires showed the world what is possible when a community is in love with itself. Our government failed. And I had friends that bought a battleship and filled it up with supplies to bring to Lahaina a week after it happened. We bought a battleship. Our government was behind, it still is not doing things, So it was this whole shift of understanding that when we come together, we can get things done. And all this whole system of the way that we've been doing things is it doesn't actually function in its most efficient way. And everyone loves the islands. If you've ever been here, there's just a love that you develop for it instantaneously. And I feel personally that that's because the energy that's here used to be all over the entire planet. And through that fall of consciousness, which is not bad, it was not, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we wanted to experience what it would be like to be separate from this consciousness of love. And now we know, and we bring that data back in to expand what that is.
So we fucked around and found out, is what you're saying?
You said what?
We fucked around and found out. We were like,
find out. Really? Oh,
and now we're like, no, put us back in.
Yeah, is it working? No. Yeah. It's the way things are is not working, And so, my next step of my career is assisting this process in making the islands function in the way that they used to through a modern lens, and with that on display for the world of what's actually possible when you come together in community love. It's just super inspirational. And I can just know that in my heart and see it. It's, I guess, hard to explain. But I think as the world goes through these shifts, there are going to be these points on the planet that have inspired communities, which are going to showcase new ways of living. And as more and more of us figure this out, and as more and more of us get exhausted of the old ways of doing things, that shift is just going to organically occur.
Tell me more about the organic occurrence. Again, people want to know what they can do. We're still in doing. How do we communicate to people to just chill out and let it happen? Is that, because that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Chill out and let it happen. And there's a lot to do, and it's so one of the ways that I'm doing this right now is an idea that actually came to me when I was living in Washington, D.C. And I went to school for finance to figure out how finance could work for everyone. And this fully formed idea called harmony just plopped itself in my head, channeled the Phoenix book, there's no way I came up with that. It was just fully formed idea. And the basis of that is a community trust fund, which starts debt-free cooperatives in a community that their only mandate is to increase wages and decrease the cost of goods and services by minimizing the profit. And then that profit gets recycled back to the trust along with the monthly contributions of the community to start more debt-free cooperatives in the community. And so it creates this cycle of abundance that brings the economy into a state of restedness. Because the reason why so much of the whole economic cycle is fake, and that's a whole other story. But it's because the elements are out of balance. And this goes into like Chinese medicine and stuff, but where the fire element is like way out of place. And what we need to do is come into a place of grounding, because as people's nervous systems are pulling in all this energy and it's doing, stuff to their mind, their emotions, they're feeling all these things. That's why they're seeking out this type of information, because things haven't been working and they're trying to figure out how to find a new balance. And so my focus is on the community wide level of this, and figuring out new tools and systems in order to organize society in a way that allows us to come into a deeper rest. One of the paradoxes of Hawaii, especially Oahu, is it's one of them, the world comes here to relax. And the average person here is working like 80 hours a week to just barely get by.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's very expensive. Like one of those things at Whole Foods, the spinach box, box of spinach, it's like $10 here, and back home in Oregon, that's like $4.99 or something.
Right.
So just the cost of living is really high. And the islands, it's an island. So if we can solve something here, then that idea can be distributed to the world as well. And so I really envision this whole cycle of all the basic needs being owned by the community. So collaborative provision, instead of, and this idea came with like Uber, like collaborative consumption, right? But what if that concept was flipped into the production or the provision of goods? We all need to eat. We all need like some form of like healthcare. What if all of these things were owned by the community? And then if you don't, you can maximize the amount of use of goods and services by increasing wages and decreasing the cost of them and making it more available. Because what does money actually do? It just moves resources. And so how do we want to do that as a community? I think that's the important question is really, how do we want to do that? Like, is it functioning the way that we currently experience it? And I can tell you for the islands, it's not. And Hawaii will not be Hawaii without Hawaiians. And so kind of circling all the way back to what we were talking about before, we need to figure out a way to ensure the richness of our communities. And there's so much culture here in the islands, and it's currently being exported with no way of importing it back. And we need to figure that out. So
there's so much to dive into here. And, I like educationally, I have a background in political science and then an MBA. So I got questions. How is what you're talking about different from communism? Like, we know that when that collectivist idea hit human nature in practicality, it didn't work out so well, especially for queer folks, but for lots of people. Anybody that was divergent in any way was kind of the first to go under that system. And we still had people rising up into power and subjugating other people, but even in a much more extreme way, in an authoritarian way. And so how do we create a collectivist economy without somebody that doesn't create an opportunity for one bad actor to rise up and oppress everybody?
Totally. Well, I think the first thing is that the way that this whole system is designed is a community is really built upon trust. And I think it would be quite difficult in pretty much any community in the world to actually have the vibrational, the emotional community equity in order to actually create this. But especially because of Lahaina and what we figured out together as a community, there's a sense of togetherness here that is in part because it is very expensive. We rely on others to get by, so to speak, you know. And there's just like a more tribal mentality here. But really, when you marry the quote unquote benefits of communism and the benefits of capitalism together and move from a competition based society into one of collaborative effort, it's not, we can look at it from the old way of competition, and someone is just going to outcompete this, you know, system or whatever. But the only way that you could actually come into power over in a hierarchical way was if you were more altruistic than what we were doing. So it's kind of like what Elon Musk is doing, like pushing electric cars by driving that force, and it's like forcing everyone else to follow suit because you can't compete with something that is like almost beyond competition. It's like doing it for the greater good. And so if we don't have the mandate to make profit, we just need to move money and have enough surplus that it goes back to the community trust. And it's simply for, you know, basic common goods. And what happens is, like, the richest person on the planet right now lives in abject poverty, and compared to the world where we as a collective have decided that our basic needs are going to be ensured, like food and housing. And we can do that through many different means. But right now there's especially in Oahu, such an extractive quality. There's all these luxury condo buildings being built and no one is living in them, you know? So I think the answer to your question is more about a new level of community consciousness being developed. And I feel like part of my job is to inspire that. And community, first and foremost, is an inside job first. Community starts with yourself. And if you don't have a good community within your own being, then there's no way that you can participate in a community outside of you. And I think that living here has really taught me that. And aloha is a strong love sometimes, and it can be fierce, and you'll learn your lessons, but it's all out of this love. And I think that quality of what we have here allows us to create a foundation of a new way of doing things that just hasn't yet been seen in the world because there hasn't been a basis, nor the technology. We're at a really interesting time where we're going to move beyond all of these concepts of things and move into the application, partly because we're going to be forced by just all the pressures that life is giving us right now.
So what can the average person, the person listening to this, watching this, do to prepare themselves for this shift, for this transition?
Can the average person do? Well, I think just not making your journey wrong. Whatever you've experienced is okay. And whatever you need to do in order to find okayness, and this is one of my most basic things that I love to share with all of my clients, is the first step is finding safety within yourself. And if you can't be okay with what's happened in your life, can you be okay that you can't be okay? And keep zooming out until you find the smallest amount of okayness within yourself. And then you'll be fully in that state of safety, okayness. And as the world is greatly shifting, it's going to be important to come back to your own nourishment within yourself, and kind of coming back to this whole electricity and magnetism. It's like, find out what is good for you. and what is not good for you. Because if you're not clear on what those things are, you're not going to be able to navigate the world, because what you'll be doing is moving with the wind, and the wind is just going to get louder and louder as time goes on. Not because the world is getting worse or any of these things. It's because we're being asked to flip the way in which we're interacting with the world, and we have to come into that community with self first. And your community is your emotions, your thoughts, the ways in which you do things. Like, are you actually happy doing that? And if the answer to that is no, change it. And sometimes those things can be difficult to change, because life is asking us to change patterns that we've been living our entire lives. And it's not always easy to do that. But do we want to slowly decay, or do we want to truly thrive? And that comes into a question of, how much do you think you're worth? And I know that I'm worth a lot, and I know that this community is worth a lot. And it's from that place of worthiness and the worthiness that's around us that we can begin to shift the way that we interact and grow together as a community. But it starts within, and I think that's where most of the world is at right now, is just learning how to be okay with themselves, and that's okay, you know. And so it's an exciting time of alchemizing within yourself, and you know, one of the best things that we can do is just write a list of all the unfinished things in our life. Like, I ask myself, like, okay, show me who I need to forgive in order for my life to move to the next level. Write down a list, bullet point of all those things. I don't know how to forgive this. Show me how to forgive that. You know? This practice, literally, I had 6 UTIs back to back a couple years ago. And I've always been a very natural person, but I just never had a UTI, didn't know how to fix it. Got antibiotics. They just kept putting me on stronger and stronger antibiotics, and put me on Cipro at the end, which was very bad for me. UTI came back, and I was done with antibiotics. I was like, and it was like, I need to go to the ER. Like, I feel like I'm going to explode level of UTI. And I sat down and I was just like, show me whatever I need to resolve in order for this to heal right now. And all these memories started popping up. And I was like, oh, it was so overwhelming, the emotion, right? Show me how to forgive this. And one by one, just moving through Ho'oponopono, through each memory that was popping up. 30 minutes in, I'm like, I'm feeling a lot less pain. And I just decided I was going to keep going until no memory came up anymore. At the end of that meditation, I no longer had a UTI, and I have never had another UTI ever again. So these sorts of things are going to become very commonplace, because as trauma is being lifted out of the body, which I think gets really to the core of your question, is what can people do most practically in their lives right now? And it's get ahead of the energy that you haven't finished yet, because it's going to rise out of your system, because it's time for us to all be clean and clear so that our soul can really show up and shine. And so whatever you're going through, just ask yourself, like, show me whatever I need to resolve in order for this to heal. And sometimes it's, just finally letting go of a memory, just accepting that it really happened. And I think that's a prime tenet of Ho'oponopono, is acceptance, just accepting that it happened. And how do we move forward from there? And there's a lot of stuff on a collective level as well that we're going to have to accept has happened. Kind of like what we talked about at the beginning with the islands. Like, yeah, we colonized these islands. Like, that happened. Now, how do we move forward in a way, and the Hawaiians also colonized the islands. So let's not forget that.
Right. Shout out to one of my favorite books, Sapiens, if you want if you want some background on that. Everybody colonized everything and people colonized animals.
Yeah.
And
So it's just like we've all been the villain and the hero. So
yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely. Ho'oponopono, by the way, for those listening, Hawaiian, to make ho'opono good or cool, what we would say, all right, pono, right? You're good, I'm good. So we're going to make it good with you. We're going to make it good with me. It's a mutual forgiveness process. And this concept of being pono within ourselves, forgiving ourselves to start. We can't forgive anybody else until we forgive ourselves. So we're coming to the end of our time. I do want everybody listening to know, if you want help releasing this stuff, there are people that can help you. You have the resources that you need within yourself, and there are folks who can help you access those resources, including me, including Barrett, and including lots and lots of other people. So please, if you need help or you want help, seek that out. There's lots of help for you. And I agree with you, Barrett. I think it starts with everyone getting pono by themselves. And then from there, pono and pono. exponential pono. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Barrett. Where can people find you if they want to? And please do find him and follow him.
Well, very much like Hawaii, we're all on Instagram and Instagram only, basically. So my Instagram is BarrettLeeTegner, Barrett Lee Tegner.
All right, go follow Barrett. And keep on listening, keep on growing with us. Thanks for listening to us today, watching us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.